I'm Alex. No, let me start that again because I didn't know what I was actually
You go Alex, or are you going to go Scrof and Kitch?
Oh, good question. This might just be our intro.
What?
Just us talking like this.
That would be pretty lazy.
It would be a bit lazy, wouldn't it?
But it would be done. It's in the can.
That's it. Yeah, great.
Done.
Okay.
Next. Next bit. Next bit.
Welcome to Overbore. I'm Alex Robbins. This is Richard Kitchen, also known as Scrof and Kitch, and we are doing a podcast because we're middle-aged men, and that's what we've decided to do. We know about cars, so we're going to do a podcast on cars. Sometimes. The idea behind this podcast is very simple, really. I like new cars and he likes old cars. It's actually a little bit more complicated than that because I do quite like old cars as well. But the basic idea is to be an inclusive podcast, inclusive in terms of bringing people together who might be interested in old cars with people who might be interested in new cars, helping each other to foster some... that was going so well up to that point, wasn't it?
Well, I mean...
Bringing people together to foster some understanding between those who may be passionate about carbs and petrol and ignition and spark plugs.
Look at you trying to do engine bits.
And
it's so sweet. Valves.
Valves! That's it. That's what I was going for. I got there in the end. And those who may be interested in charging cables.
Yay.
I'm a motoring journalist. I get to write about cars every day. It's a wonderful thing to be able to do. But it does mean...
Not what you said earlier.
It does mean I get to muck around with new cars quite a lot. Rich, on the other hand, gets to muck around with old cars quite a lot because he is a...
grease monkey.
There you go. That's it.
YouTuber. Apparently so.
Rich, I'll do it for you. Rich is a very good mechanic and YouTuber. Rich has looked after several of my cars in the past. I've known Rich for some years. We met in a McDonald's car park.
I nearly got arrested.
You nearly got arrested.
Yeah, I remember that.
I didn't get arrested. We'll tell you
no, because you ran away.
Because I ran away. I'll tell you about that another day. And it was the beginning of a lifelong friendship in which he's convinced me to buy several cars.
Well, it's not lifelong because we haven't died yet.
That's fair. And also you weren't there at the start of mine either.
No.
So a friendship during which Rich has convinced me to buy several cars and then I have convinced him to look after them. That's basically the foundation of our friendship.
Yeah, I was gonna come back with some kind of retort, but now you put it like that, that's pretty much it.
You've convinced me to buy...
No, hang on, I didn't convince you to buy anything.
You've convinced me to buy several BXs. Actually, I probably wanted the BXs in the first place.
I think you wanted them. I didn't convince you.
You convinced me to buy the Xantia from you.
Yes, because I was selling it.
You convinced me to buy Doug from you.
Sorry. Was the Xantia a good car?
Yeah, I'm not disputing that fact. You convinced me to buy Doug from you.
Was Doug a good car?
Yeah, absolutely. You convinced me to buy the TVR.
Was the TVR a good car?
A brilliant car. And you convinced me to buy the DS.
See, I didn't know whether to say, and is Audrey a good car? But I wasn't going to because we move on.
It's also not a DS.
But it's also, you've said it's a DS and you've put me at a kind of a T-junction. I don't know which way to turn.
Bit of a
so I've just broken down.
Disconnect. That's
like Audrey.
Well, this is going well so far, isn't it?
Yeah, very brilliant, yeah. Excellent.
You'll notice we're sitting in a car.
Yeah, if you're listening to this, then it means nothing to you. Unless I do this.
Ah, there we go.
People are going to know what... Well, that's just a horn. I mean, but
that shows we're in a car. That's just a car door.
These are. No, I'm making BX noises.
Oh, are you? Well, that's a BX horn.
No, it's not. It's just a horn. But anyone who knows BXs will know.
Oh, yeah.
You cannot. It's not going to be a feature every week. It's just because this is the one that was here.
Yeah, basically. We might sit in other cars, so you've got that to look forward to. Yeah. Anyway, as I was saying, the premise of this podcast is that we want to talk about new cars and old cars in a way that allows enthusiasts of one to enjoy the other and vice versa.
Yes, they're not football teams, right? You don't need to get tribal. You don't need to, if you can like old cars, but if you shut yourself down, and I'm doing this as openly as everyone else, I don't really like new cars, as you know. I'm not really into them, but I'm open. I'm open to reading things and seeing what's happening with cars now, because it might not all be as bad as it looks.
No.
It might not be terrible. Someone might be doing something good somewhere.
And I obviously do a lot with new cars in my job. I got into cars around old cars, but I spend a lot of time around newer cars, and I can see some of the arguments against. But I also think that there's a lot of good in the new car world, and I kind of feel as though if you write all that off as just, oh, new cars are all rubbish, you run the risk of missing out on some things and not learning a few things. So yeah, I suppose I'm a bit on the fence about new cars, but I work with them every day, and I can kind of see the good in some of the modern advancements. I can see the bad in a lot of the modern advancements as well, but we'll get onto that one day, I'm fair.
LED touchscreens.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of touchscreens. That you'll work that out, I'm fairly sure.
Do you know what the best thing I can say to an LED touchscreen is?
Go on.
This is me. I'm playing with knobs.
For those of you who are listening,
listen.
Clicky bits.
Button.
Clicky bits.
I don't have to take my eyes off the road to do that. I can just.
Yeah. We like clicky bits. We do like clicky bits.
We do.
It's one of the scourges of modern cars. Actually, is the invasion of kind of touchscreens and also not just touchscreens but touch sensitive controls. I can kind of live with a touchscreen that just does the nav and the radio and this, that, and the other. But when you've got touch-sensitive controls for everything else, like the climate control,
heating is just...
the heating or the lights. I have lost count of the times I've been in a test car on a dark night, trying to turn the lights on and having to look at where I'm putting my fingers because you can't just do it by touch because it's a touchpad, which is frustrating. So we're going to have a rant about things like that, I think.
I'll be rant. I'm quite happy to have rants. Yeah, I'm not good at many things, but I can moan really well.
But we're also going to be trying to find the good in new cars as well. I'm going to be trying to show you a world which you've never yet experienced.
Better have a pretty strong telescope.
of things to do with new cars. And, likewise, you're going to be showing me good things about old cars.
I don't need to show you good things about old cars because you'll go... I like that before I've told you anything about it.
Point. I mean, I already do like old cars. Yeah, so you're possibly going to be explaining some things to me that I don't
what I would quite
understand.
like to do is perhaps to show people listening to the podcast, if anyone does, like the things on old cars that have been overlooked.
Yeah.
That perhaps didn't get the attention that they should have had.
Yeah.
Because I think there's quite a lot.
And I think also a big part of that is also going to be, we know there are a lot of people out there who are, enjoy new cars and might like the idea of becoming a classic car owner, but becoming an enthusiast. Well, they're already enthusiasts, but it's, they're
consumers.
Okay. We're trying to be inclusive here, Rich.
No, I don't care.
This is going well.
This isn't monetised yet. When it's monetised, that'll be lovely. But until then, they're consumers. When you get a car that has a Wikipedia entry and it's got like a long history, then you've become
a car enthusiast. Is that your definition?
An enthusiast.
Is that your definition?
Well, in fairness, the Ford Fiesta's got quite a long entry. There's been like 8 different versions of it, or 7 if you're not in the UK.
Yeah, I know about this.
So they don't regard the Mark 7.
No.
They regard the Mark 5 that we say, which I've owned 2 of,
as a facelift Mark 4.
I'd be a bit more impressed.
Yeah. Oh wow.
No, genuinely. Ask me what they were.
What? Mark 5?
Oh, it's gone. Right, it's gone now. So, the Mark 4, like what we call the Mark 5, everyone else calls the Mark 4. We've decided to give it I don't know why, because I wanted to stand up for it, being British, and being like, no, we've done it the right way. And I'm not sure we have.
Do you remember that bit before we sat down where we said we've got to really grab people with this first episode and really talk about issues that are going to really...
Oh, bless. You're only 10 minutes in. You're trying to be spiky already. It's great. I love it when you try. It's great.
To be fair, I do actually agree.
The Fiesta, the owners at the moment will be glued.
Yeah, absolutely.
They'll be loving this. They'll be like, we're 10 minutes in and they're talking about Fiestas.
You haven't even started talking about Mark 3.5s and Mark 3s. Which is a whole nother world.
You can they do that with TVR. Someone decided that a TVR Chimera, or there's like a Mark 2.5. There's not even a Mark 2. But yeah.
No, yeah, it all gets very confusing. And if you are excited about different marks of Fords, then we can tell you where to look for.
I can offer you something.
Yeah,
but probably not much more than that.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So that's what the podcast is going to be about, different marks of old Fords. It's not, don't worry. Anyway, yeah, so welcome to the podcast. And that's kind of the rough idea of what we're going to try and do here. We're going to talk about old cars, but we're also going to talk about new cars. And we're going to talk about what we've been up to, what we've been driving, what you've been working on. And what exciting things have passed through your workshop in the last week? I'm sitting here and I can see a lot of old Citroens, to be honest.
Nothing's passed through.
I can see 2 silver Saxos and 2 red BXs. So do you exclusively work on silver Saxos and red BXs? Is that it?
No, I've worked on... I had a grey BX.
Oh, wow. The variety.
Yeah. I'm not being boring. I'm not just like focusing... I'm not putting all my eggs in one basket. And it was an estate.
There's also an SM in the corner as well.
Yes, there is.
Well, there's parts of an SM in the corner. Actually, no, there's probably...
that's not an insult, because it's true, because some of it is upstairs. So.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I can talk freely about it, because on my other world online, I don't really talk about the SM.
He's quite modest.
You've got to be reserved and humble about these things. But here, I can talk about it openly and freely.
It's true.
With like-minded people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who will be thinking, what's an SM?
A Citroen SM, in case you were not aware.
A 4-wheel diffuser.
It's a very large and awesome old car. Rich happens to own one.
Yes. See, you can't even come up with a joke. You can't even come up with anything against me there. You just sat there going,
no, I'm trying.
He's got an SM.
I'm trying.
Can't actually do anything here.
I mean,
you could laugh at the fact that it doesn't work.
It's going to take quite a while before it's on the road. But the problem I have is whenever I start to kind of denigrate it, I'm like, yeah, but it doesn't matter because
it's an SM.
And also it's a passion project for you as well. It's a kind of a lifelong thing, and therefore it's when you start to kind of take the mickey out of the fact that it's in bits, it doesn't really matter because it was never supposed to be running at this point anyway.
No, I do find myself just sat in it sometimes.
Yeah, and rightly so.
I have to limit how often I do that because the floor is slowly giving way.
Well, is it really?
Yeah. Oh, in any other world, that car is so dead. It really is. It shouldn't, but...
Shouldn't exist. No, quite.
No, but
it does.
The logic I've taken is that the moment it's jacked up on axle stands and it hasn't bent in the middle, and it was brought here on low suspension on the back of a flatbed truck, so with all the bumps and things that a flatbed has, and it was still in one piece when it got here. So it's literally had a shakedown.
So new car owners, are we enticing you into the world of classic cars yet? No?
See, what a new car owner would do is think, I'll just get myself a Morris Minor or an MGB.
I mean, is that such a bad thing to do, though? They're good starting points as classics, surely.
For me, I can't answer that. No, I can't answer it fairly because I'm too into engineering.
Okay.
I'm too into cars having some kind of USP. So if I take the Hillman Imp, well, I don't want to talk about my Hillman Imp because it will make me angry, but if you take an original Hillman Imp, that car has as an example, that car has a USP. It's got an engine that's got a character of its own, and it's lightweight, and it's slightly different to everything else, but still simple and still cheap. And that's where I would head personally. I'd be like, find the cars that are not necessarily difficult to own, but they are different to the norm in some ways. So if you take an MGB and a Morris Minor, there's a reason they're so popular, because they're cheap and they're easy.
And there's lots of them.
And there's a hell of a lot of them out there, and there's big ownership circles, and there's plenty of spares, and it's really not a stress at all. It would be easier to buy parts for a Morris Minor than my Citroen C6, and that's not actually a joke.
No, it's true.
It will be easier to buy.
Yeah.
But for me, it's kind of, and this isn't a slight against Morris. I know Morris Minor owners, so I'm not going to, but it's kind of just...
Is it too obvious?
Well, it's an car. It's the Mazda 3. Well, it's not a Mazda 3, but it's you know what I mean? It's just, too obvious is one way.
A charm to it, though, hasn't it?
Yeah, no, they do, absolutely. And if you're used to driving, and you can see, this is the beauty you've got. If you're used to driving something modern and new, anything you get in from before 1995, probably, if you go for the cheaper end of the market, it's going to feel absolutely alien and wacky and fun. But I don't think you need to go as old as a Morris Minor.
No, I think you're right. Yeah.
A 205.
Yeah.
A 205 1.1.
Yep.
Or even a diesel. No, that's going a bit far. But a 1.1 or a 1.4. You will have so much fun.
And I can lay testament to that because I used to have a 205 1.1, and it's one of the greatest fun little cars I've ever owned.
There are certain cars out there that are just they are the golden mix of being cheap, being simple to work on, being fun to drive, and most cars from the 80s now, a lot of people will say, if I said to you, there's a 1.6 Cavalier over there, a lot of people will go, Well, they weren't fun. Why would I want one of them? I remember them when I was... And I think, yeah, but now they are.
So you're kind of saying that really, if you're looking to buy a starter classic, kind of something from that 80s, early 90s period is where your sweet spot is.
That's where
really.
I would be, yeah. Well, it depends how involved you want to get with it, because something like a Morris Minor is going to need more maintenance than something, from something from the 80s or 90s probably had a 6 to 12,000 mile service schedule anyway.
Yep.
And, you'll be doing things based on time, not based on how many miles you do.
You don't need to worry about grease nipples so much.
No. So, I'm not going to joke. I know you'd expect me to come up with some kind of smutty joke, but I'm not going to. I'm going to sensibly agree and say that is correct. You won't, because that wasn't a thing so much back then.
Good, splendid. So we should come up with a few kind of good starter classics. We've come up with 205. I think a few good starter classics for people who are thinking.
The most important thing when you're buying a car like that is corrosion. Is finding one that hasn't. If it has, because a lot of people go, "Oh, it's been welded up, it's fine," and it's like, yeah, but who welded it? Because if Stevie Wonder welded it, and he has done a few of the cars I've had through here, or one of his associates, and he's put fiberglass onto the top of really bad welding, and it's like, yes, it's been welded, but that's not necessarily a good thing.
Yeah.
It could be a good thing.
I've got a car in my garage like that at the moment.
We have, yes. This is true. I was actually looking at that one up there, because that one did too.
Yeah.
That was.
For viewers who are not viewing, Rich is pointing at one of the BXs in the workshop.
Yeah, that was an absolute state. Yeah, that was awful. So yeah, you finding a car that hasn't been welded, or if it has been welded, it's coming from ownership circles, enthusiasts, and it's known to be done properly, and they are out there.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I think the 205 is a good one. I mean, something like, if you like your German stuff, a Golf.
I think a Mark II Golf is actually a really good shout.
Yeah, Mark II Golf, because they're light.
Yeah.
They are actually light. Yeah. They're deceptive. You think it was going to be heavy and boring and stodgy because it's German, and it's like, no, they're actually quite light
They're
cars.
really comfortable. They're very usable. And, I mean, I know that they are now classic cars and rare, but even so, the amount of them that are left on the roads proportionately compared with other cars of their time is quite remarkable.
Because they're very simple.
Yeah, exactly.
This is the thing. They're very simple cars.
Yeah.
There's not much to go wrong on them. Like if you get into the, I always compared them to like this. I had a Golf GTI in here a while back, 91, from one of the last Mark IIs, and I got in this after being in the Golf, and this feels like it's from like 20 years in the future. Like even just the way the dash lights up, the dials, the switch gear, and everything. The Golf felt so old.
Yeah.
But it's all very simple. It's really easy to do.
And I will say, much as I'm a fan of BXs, the difference with a Golf is that when you wobble the dashboard, it doesn't wobble, which it does in a BX.
It doesn't, but is that a problem? People get hung up on that.
Now this comes down to what you like.
It really depends what you want.
You and I like a space age feeling car.
I think if
we
you're
like the kind of weirdness of a Citroen.
If you're prioritising sturdiness and simplicity, I think a Mark II Golf is an excellent shout. If you can get a driver, that's not a bad little spec.
Yeah, Golf driver. One of my best friends, actually, his first car had a Golf Rider, which was the 1.3. And he hammered that car, and it just lasted and lasted.
Actually, no, I tell you what, no, I can't believe I can't do that. I was about to say the Mark II Polo, but I had a Mark III Polo, and I regarded it recently as one of the worst cars I've ever had. So I can't now, in good conscience, tell people to buy a. But it was a dog, right? Yeah. And I think because one of the things I used to slag off about it was like there weren't many cars I'd driven that could roll that badly around a corner and ride that badly. It's like you normally roll because you're very soft. But I think, or at least when I hit a bump, it's going to deal with that. No, it doesn't. It's choppy and it's all over the place. Yeah. But again, looking back at it now, I reckon if I drove one and it was fully sorted, I'd probably have a smile on my face. It'd probably be quite a fun little car. So, and
I think as well, it comes down to what you like. Going back to what I was saying just now, you and I probably became friends because we have similar things we like about older cars. Like we both like the weirdness of a Citroen. We both like the engineering behind a Citroen. You know, you've owned far more Citroens than I have.
This isn't a Citroen podcast.
No, I'd like to point that out. Yeah, I was going to go on to say that there are other people out there for whom that holds absolutely no appeal whatsoever, and if that's you, welcome. You are welcome to be part of this, and we don't want to shun you and make you go away.
I won't shun you on the podcast.
You know, there are people out there for whom the sturdiness of the Golf, and it's just it's probably much closer in feel to a modern that they're coming from because of that sturdiness and because of that
it's less of a leap of faith.
Dependability.
If you got into a 205, I love 205s. I think they're fantastic.
It's a Peugeot 205.
Peugeot 205 is just the ride, the handling, the looks, the package of it is just so good. But it feels like a crisp packet compared to a
exactly. And I think that's what I mean is that if you spent your entire life to date driving, cars from, let's say, 2007, 2010 and whatnot, and you want to jump into something older, if your first experience of something older is a 205, there's a chance you might go, blimey, I feel quite exposed here. There's nothing to this. Whereas a Mark II Golf might be a bit more of a sturdy feeling thing that makes you feel a little bit more protected,
Yeah. Ironically,
I'm hypothesizing.
Ironically, you're in trouble if you crash any of them.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
But
I don't think you can go into. I think if you go into a classic car, any classic car, expecting, anywhere approaching modern levels of safety, you're on hiding to nothing, frankly. So
I think, but at the same time, I think that's kind of those are kind of boring, predictable choices, aren't they?
Yeah.
People have asked. Listening to a podcast because they want to hear two guys who are bang into their cars and they're like, right, this nitty gritty. This isn't mainstream. Mm-hmm. This is nitty gritty podcast. This is this isn't Top Gear. Mm-hmm. This is two guys. They may talk about the car I own and it'll be something really oddball, like a Rochdale Olympic or something like that. And they're going to now suggest which classic cars we should look at as owner of moderns. Mm-hmm. And they've come up with a 205 and a Golf.
It's good. We're doing well so far, I think. So
BX 1.4.
BX 1.4 is
with
quite
TU engine.
Yeah.
You want to get a Citroen BX. The 1.4 is the easiest one to work on.
Yep.
Dead simple. The most simple version of that suspension fitted to any hydrodynamic Citroen of any type. Mm-hmm. They're cheap to buy. You will buy a tidy one for about $2,500.
Yep.
They're just not very easy to find.
No. I would throw out also any sort of fairly middle of the range Japanese hatchback.
That's the next thing
from the late.
Well, I was actually going to say, when you were talking about build quality and everything like that, I would actually put the Japanese ahead of the Germans.
You're probably right, to be honest. I mean, something like even although they were derided in their day for being really boring, even something like a Corolla or a Starlet or something like that.
Do you know what I really like?
Go on.
Mazda 323F.
Fs with the pop-up headlights. Yeah.
Well, and the Lantis shape as well.
The Lantis shape's good as well.
The 2-litre V6. They were cracking cars.
Tremendous cars, yeah.
Pillarless doors.
Yeah, and I think anything like that, although you're never going to get peerless Japanese reliability in a car that's 20 or 30 years old.
But it's the rust you're contending with.
Yeah, exactly. But you are going to get a car that is that had that to start with, and therefore you're starting from a slightly better place. And
harder to find parts.
It is harder to find parts. Actually, that's actually a really big part of it.
Well, it isn't. See, because this is what happens, and I come up with a point, you agree with it, and I think I don't want you to agree with me, so then I counterpoint my own point.
Yeah.
But what I was going to say is,
that's my job, isn't it?
A lot of the Japanese cars are world cars. Mm-hmm. So you might struggle to find a Mazda 323 headlamp, for example, in the UK, but you'll probably find one if you pay the money to have it sent over from Japan or Australia.
Overnight parts from Japan.
Overnight parts from Japan. And he had a Volkswagen Vento. Known as a Jetta in America. Yeah.
What was I going to say? Yes, because I actually know of this thing, because one of my previous ventures was an Audi 80 that I bought on a whim, and I really liked that car, but one of the reasons I had to sell it was because I just could not buy any parts for it anywhere. And you would think an Audi 80 is not a hard car to buy parts for. It's a fairly mainstream saloon from the late 80s, early 90s, but the problem is there are so few of them left now. It's just not in a parts manufacturer's interest to make the bits for them.
The thing with that era of Audi is that was when Audi, like, I don't want to alienate people, probably one of my lesser favoured makes, because I liked them back in those days, because it was like they had a thing, they had a mantra, they had something they went for, and they were different to other cars for that. And cars like the Audi 100, it looked gawky as hell, I think, but there was logic in everything. And the 80 is the same kind of thing, but it kind of strikes me as the era that Audi are like not really fussed about remembering.
No, you're right. You're right.
I think the last car Audi, they made the A2, and I think they probably wanted to forget about that, even though that was well ahead of its time.
What? You say that they did do a one-off kind of concept recently, which was a resto modded A2 with an electric powertrain. And I think that...
You look at it and think, that's probably the powertrain it should have had.
Well, that's the thing. I looked at that car and I thought to myself, well, if you make that now, you'll sell them. You look at, in the new car world, retro. A lot of manufacturers are now trying to trade on their heritage to differentiate themselves from the glut of new Chinese electric cars that are coming
automobiles.
Well, yeah, I tell you who's doing really well though is Renault. Renault have got a new 5, and the new 5 is, I've not driven it yet, I've heard really good things. It is a tremendous looking little car, and for an electric car it's actually reasonably priced. I think it starts at 22.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Not a stupid
we
amount
were
of money.
in France the other day, and we spotted one on the, what do they call the French?
Autoroute.
Yeah. We were on one of those, and
They're
we
insanely good little cars. They just look
what presents that thing's got. And the thing is, like cars that have presents, you normally put that down to being really aggressive looking with a like mad, I hate the word, but stance.
Yes.
And like they're trying to be
an angry face.
Yeah, but it wasn't.
No, it's a happy car.
It was just, it had presents, just
being happy.
Yeah. You know,
I hear good things about them,
but I worry.
Why?
Because that to me just says Renault have gone, right, well, we can't come up with anything better. Do that again.
I mean, yes, you
revisit that, because they're doing the same thing with the Ford.
I can see that worry, but I also think that there is definitely, what I was going to say is there's definitely a move among manufacturers that what legacy manufacturers have versus the Chinese manufacturers that are coming in is heritage, and they can trade on that. And they're saying, well, look, this is what we've done in the past. Do you remember these cars we used to make that you loved? Here's another one of those, but updated. There's a lot of that coming through now.
Your move, Shanghai.
There is a little bit of that, and I think that's the idea behind cars like that. And
that's a fair point.
And I think it has got legs. It might well work, especially if it's reasonably priced like the 5. You know, I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to buy a 5 or a BYD Dolphin? Do you know what a BYD Dolphin is?
No.
It's a small EV SUV. It's not really an SUV. It's more of a super mini, but it's
we saw a BYD Seal the other. This is completely unrelated. We saw a BYD Seal the other day because I did this thing on YouTube with a live stream thing, and one of the teams had a BYD Seal, and we were trying to find one of the tasks. We wanted the people to find the drivers of the car to find a penguin and put it in the car for reasons. And it was pointed out to us during the test that you've been putting a penguin and put it in a seal. And I thought, oh, please, that's amazing.
That's sensational. Did they manage to do it?
No.
Ah, that's disappointing. Well, that's really rubbish climax to that story, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. Yeah, I did sell it up the river. But they did take a BYD Dolphin. No, Seal. Are they all named after aquatic animals?
Except the Atto 3.
What's that named after?
I don't know.
Is that supposed to be A to 3?
I don't think so.
But 3 looks a bit like a B. Do you think in China someone's read English and they've got English as like a third language and they've gone, that says A to, it was supposed to be A to B, and they've written A to 3?
I don't think so. I think it's just called
Am I doing a stallion thing again?
You probably are.
Because that was bollocks.
Rubbish.
That was not true.
Well, you're not far off with the aquatic animals though, because there's the dolphin, there's the seal, and they're about to launch the sea lion.
None of them beat the Funky Cat.
The Funky Cat. Do you know they've renamed the Funky Cat?
I know.
They've renamed it.
The Aura Funky Cat.
Well, I went on the launch of the, was it the Atto 3 I was on? Yeah, I was on the launch of the Atto 3, and one of the chaps from BYD I was sitting next to him at the lunch, and he said, do you have any feedback on the car? And I said, because BYD stands for Build Your Dreams. And at that point, they were writing Build Your Dreams along the back of the car as the badge. And he said, do you have any feedback? And I said, you probably want to take the badge that says Build Your Dreams off the back of that.
Are you claiming that you were behind that?
No, I probably wasn't. But have they still got one? They might still have it on the car.
I wouldn't know one if I saw it on the road, to be honest with you. There's only a couple. I tell you what, that's actually a good test for new cars, is if some old Luddite like me, who only likes the old ones, notices them.
And you've noticed the seal.
The seal, look, I call it a Tesla from Wish.
I mean, it is definitely a Tesla Model 3 rival. It's a funny thing.
But that's not a slight, actually. I would have the BYD all day long.
There's some, the BYD is an interesting car, actually, because the Dolphin has been a bit, the Atto's a bit, but the Seal's actually a really good car.
Right,
the Seal's a pretty good thing. They all
I just liked it because it wasn't an SUV.
All the BYDs have this gimmick, which is a touchscreen in the middle of it. Everything's touchscreen in those, so you wouldn't like that. I don't really like it, but the touchscreen can rotate, so you can have it portrait or landscape.
Oh, more distraction.
Brilliant. Which, I mean, is a gimmick. I'm not going to pretend it isn't, but there is a moment when you go, actually, if I turn it that way around, I can see the nav better. and you go, oh, there is a small amount of usefulness in that function.
This is completely at odds with everything I have learned recently.
What's that?
Because when we went on holiday to France a little while ago and we saw the Renault 5 driving down the road and thought, oh, that's good. We gave up with Google Maps because it couldn't
because of the Renault 5.
Couldn't do
it was that amazing. You went, I must give up my Google Maps.
No, no, there's absolutely no link in that at all.
Right, okay.
It's just that Google Maps couldn't handle French towns. It put us into a supermarket car park and kept us in there for 15 minutes, to the point I thought it was trying to get us kidnapped, and it was like stalling us so that some dodgy guy was going to come along. And everyone goes on about, this isn't an advert, everyone goes on about Waze. So we downloaded that, and it forces you to have your phone in portrait mode. And I went, that's stupid.
Yeah.
And after about 5 minutes, I went, it's better like that.
It is. Sat
nav works better
because you can see further ahead.
Yeah. I don't need
I
don't need to see if there's a lake 2 miles to the left.
Exactly.
As I'm driving along.
Well, this is why I've never understood why most touchscreens in cars are landscape, because when you're using the nav, you're looking at each side.
It makes more sense for the radio, maybe, but yeah, it's just
yes and no.
Well, if you have the writing left to right, it can be bigger and clearer.
Yeah, that's true. Actually,
if you've got it on portrait, it's compressed, and you're like,
yeah.
What am I listening to? You could listen to Seal in a BYD Seal. Going to the Sea Life Centre.
In 2 podcasts' time, we'll make that happen.
Seal is coming on the show.
I'm talking rubbish. It's probably not going to happen. But we'll see. You never know. Seal and a BYD Seal. What other? We need to think about other. So yeah, we can think about other musical artists to listen to in other cars with similar names. Not now.
Oh,
in the future we can think about that as a podcast to do.
I am still thinking.
I don't think too long, because otherwise we'll run out of podcast.
AC/DC and an AC Ace. They wouldn't fit as only 2 seats. Although two of them have died, so. Well, if you count the original singer, he got replaced.
I wasn't talking about putting the band in there. I was just talking about you and me listening to it. Getting an AC Ace and listening to AC/DC in it.
I'm game for that. I like both. A bit of both. I would have an Ace over a Cobra.
Yeah, I can see that.
Just to be different from the norm.
Yeah.
I think Aces are a pretty car.
To be fair, I think Cobras are awesome as well. But
I worked with too many kit cars to like Cobras.
Yeah,
I can't.
Yeah, and the thing is as well, you've always been somebody who slightly wants to have the slightly contrary alternative. The Imp, for example, you don't want the Mini, you want the Imp, but you want the
Imp
alternative option.
I can't say it clearly because I don't want to kill our podcast on the first episode, but I think the Imp is better than the Mini.
No, well, I know that. I know that you think that. I don't know.
Actually, no, that's bollocks. I don't think it's better. I think the Mini probably is better as a design, exercise, as a product, everything like that. But everything the Imp does, I prefer. Because as I say, because you're the contrary one. You like the contrary. No, it's just they're better. No, it's got nicer gear change, nicer steering, rides better, better engine.
Yeah. Okay.
Whereas the Minis, like, I'm not being contrary.
Of course not. Anyway, where were we? What were we discussing?
I'm talking about that Mazda 121 I want to get because I don't want a Fiesta. So I'm going to try and find a rebadged Mazda 121.
Which Fiesta, Mark 4 or Mark 5?
Yeah, exactly.
Renault 5's really good little car. Why were we talking about Renault 5's?
Because I think you want to talk about the hot one that was mooted today.
Yeah, that's happening and that looks really cool. £150,000 or something obscene.
Are you taking the 150?
I'll just consult. Hang on a minute. I'll double check. I have consulted. It's not quite 150 grand. They haven't announced prices yet, but it's going to be probably more than 100,000.
So that was a lie.
Yeah. I would like to just make a disclaimer on this podcast that anything I say should not be believed ever.
No, this is all just
anything I say. Yeah, it's just rubbish.
If it's come out of your mouth.
Yeah, and yours.
No, you can believe what I say. If I say something entirely stupid, you can believe it's true. I probably have done that. Yeah, you can believe it. It's not a DS. It's a D special. It's an ID.
We should clarify for people who don't know us, which is probably about 3 of you. I own an old Citroen, which is called a D special. It's like a DS, but not a DS.
It does not have the brakes.
Which is very keen to remind me of the differences between my car and a full-blown, full-fat Citroen DS.
The car, if you studied in school a little bit longer, and worked a little bit harder,
I'd have a proper DS.
you'd have a DS 21 or 23 with a button as a brake
But as
pedal.
it is, I have a D Special, which has a proper brake pedal.
Well, in Citroen parlance,
It's not a proper brake pedal.
it's a peasant's
Absolutely. It's a peasant's car with all the options on it, though, because it has got the swivelly lights, which was an optional extra.
but not the levelling lights.
Not the levelling lights. But it doesn't need them, because the whole car levels, doesn't it?
No, I mean, the headlights act like a gimbal.
Oh, I see.
They're like the head of a bird.
Right, okay.
You know, when you get an owl and you get its body and you shake it around,
Yeah, I've done that lots.
and its head
I've done
stays
that
still.
loads, yeah.
Who doesn't? It's it's like the headlights on a DS or SM. That isn't mine, because mine's a US one. They do that, so you don't blind people coming the other way. When you go over bumps and things, the idea is the light doesn't come up and blind people. Which, ironically, is what happens today in modern cars.
It's true.
The stupid LED lights. But
Anyway, it's not a Citroen podcast.
No. No, I do try and pull everything back to it. Come up with some good idea. I think the DS said that back in 1955.
The Renault 5 Turbo
Isn't a turbo.
It isn't a turbo, but it's called the Turbo.
No, they're
the
not.
Turbo. Yeah, they are. Yeah, they're calling it the Turbo 3S. Turbo 3S? Turbo
Oh, no,
something.
bollock. I don't want to know. I don't know. No, you can't call it a turbo. It literally doesn't have a turbo.
No, well, Porsche have done it already. You know Porsche do that, don't you?
No.
Yeah, I've done it for years. The Taycan Turbo is an electric car.
I can't.
And this is how I'm introducing him to the world of new cars.
You can't call it a turbo if it doesn't have a turbo.
I mean, I do tend to agree with you.
It's like calling a Razor a Mac turbo or something.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. People have been doing it for years. You can get turbo
Yeah, and it's
Razors,
stupid.
turbo Hoovers, turbo whatever. I've seen Hoovers that have a turbo button on them. Oh, I've ruined your world now.
Oh,
I'm
for
really sorry.
Christ, why have they called it a turbo? I don't want it. And I wasn't going to buy it anyway.
I was going to say, I don't think you were going to be
I'm not its sort of
prime
customer.
target
It
audience, were you?
has high spec. I've seen the 0 to 60 time of 3.5 seconds.
3.5 seconds, yeah.
And I just think to myself, who on earth needs to do 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds?
I mean, it is kind of a problem with a lot of the modern electric cars, is that you're basically putting people into a new car that you can just buy, that is as quick as pretty much any performance car ever has.
If you went back in time and bought a Jaguar XJ220, what would the 0 to 60 time on that?
I don't know, but it's probably around 2.93-ish, something like that.
They were slower than that,
Do you reckon?
surely. Yeah, I reckon
I
about
think
3.5.
they were pretty quick. They were
Yeah,
pretty quick.
fast car,
Yeah.
but bearing in
Might
mind
be
you've got a big
3.5,
clunky
yeah.
gearbox to change
I don't know,
through.
I'd have to check it. I can't be bothered to
But I
consult
reckon
it.
when you bought one of those cars, they probably made you do like a day of training at.
Well, this is what I was just
a
going to say.
racetrack
I
or
remember in the
something.
90s, if you bought a Mitsubishi Evo 6, or was it 7, you got a free day of driver training. And that car wasn't as quick as half these electric cars.
No, that's what I mean. Any old idiot can go into one of these dealers and buy an electric car
Yep.
that can launch off the line so fast.
I had an Hyundai Ioniq 5N in the other week, 650 horsepower. 641 horsepower. When it's on boost, when it's not on boost mode, it's
Doesn't
just
have
doing
boost.
it has a mode you can press to give it a bit more.
Oh, they call it boost.
They call
like
it
when my phone
actually, no,
charges.
they don't call it that. You're going to love this.
Oh, I'm not. That generally means I'm going to be angry.
They call it N-Grin Boost, NGB mode, because it's an Ioniq 5N and it's making you grin.
That doesn't. No, that
NGB.
doesn't bug me.
Doesn't it?
No, I
That's
don't think so.
interesting.
No, because I think you're going to play.
I'm
if you're
learning
going to have,
about you.
No, if you're going to have electric cars, then play on the silliness. Think.
That is a car that
think-
very much does that, to be
Think
fair.
computer games.
Yeah.
You know, think silly electrical things that make you laugh.
Yeah.
You know, an electric car has an eight. I think half the reason these cars do 0 to 60 in these so many seconds and that, it's not hard to make an electric car go silly fast off the line.
No.
I think that I think manufacturers deliberately make them do that, or deliberately make them able to do that, because it's one of the kind of selling points of the car. The fact it can pull away so fast.
Well, historically, part of the problem with electric cars is that it's very easy to make them go fast, but how do you generate involvement? Because there are a lot of electric cars that are fast, but it then ends up being kind of a one-trick pony. It feels very one-dimensional when you drive them. Hyundai's answer with the Ioniq 5N is basically to try and make it imitate a petrol car as closely as possible.
And I am kind of... a lot of people now will hear this. Well, they won't, because a lot of people aren't listening. But some people will hear this and they'll be like, no. Like I was about the turbo. They'll be like, that's disgraceful.
I must say, I'm surprised that that's your response, because a lot of people, and myself included when I first heard about this, will say that is absolutely atrocious. And it's sort of a tacit admission that you an electric car cannot be as exciting as a petrol car in and of itself if you're trying to make it imitate a petrol
Personally speaking, I think the most fun type of an electric car you could have would be one that would make silly noises.
Yeah.
So like spaceship noises,
And it
like
does that.
whirring and like whining and like. Have you ever heard? I don't know much about trains. Oh, I can do trains as well, but I can't really. But there's a train.
Deltix.
Well, no, because that's going.
We're
against
a train podcast
That's
now.
going against my point. Yeah, if this one's too niche and we get like, at least 20 viewers, 20 listeners,
we'll do trains.
we could do a train one, for an extra 5.
Great.
And then they'll get 3 minutes into it and go, these guys don't know what they're talking about.
They've probably all gone there because they've realised that.
Because they are very, very, like, train people.
Yeah.
Are just, it's not a train, it's a locomotive. And it's like, oh, mate. Anyway, stop interrupting me. Right, so then not the Deltic.
Yeah.
I know, I can't think what it's called. I think...
It's a great story.
I think, building up to the
Climax.
the climax of the story. I think it's called a Class 91.
Okay.
Do you remember the Intercity 125?
Yes.
Do you remember the Intercity 225?
Just about, yes.
Ah, see, that's the one. Those sound mental.
Aha.
Because when they pull away, they've got like different fields or something. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
There's basically a lot of electrical current going through.
Oh, I see.
And the fans and the whirring.
Yeah.
It's almost like sci-fi as it pulls away. They're cool.
Yep. Well, actually...
And I think you could have cars, surely, almost like Formula E kind of thing.
Yeah, they do that. I mean, the Ioniq 5N, it does have funky engine noises. That actually has... And it plays you a fake engine noise through the internal speakers. And there's even an external speaker, so it'll do it outside
I know,
as well.
I've heard this.
You've heard this.
And you can set, it is the wrong
you can set
thing,
which engine noise it makes. So it can either make a noise that sounds a bit like a hot hatch, so a petrol engine noise, or it will do a whirry sci-fi electric car engine noise. Or, and I never actually got to try this one.
Massey Ferguson.
No, it will do a jet fighter type whooshy kind of... I don't actually know what that sounds like, but I'm intrigued. Like
all the jet fighter owners have just thrown something at the...
I'm in two minds about this, because there's a part of me that goes, this is awful, awful fakery. But there's also a part of me that goes, if we're going to have a car that doesn't make any natural noise, why don't we explore the elements that can make it fun?
Do you know the thing is, they're almost like mods. You could buy these cars, and then third-party software developers can make mods.
It's great. It's
literally, you can download characteristics to your car because this car can be tuned in every which way.
It's like a blank canvas, basically.
Well, yeah, you've got a throttle pedal and a brake pedal, and none of it's mechanically connected to anything.
No.
So if you want to make it behave like a 2-cylinder Trabant or something like that, or a 2CV, they can give it the throttle response and sound effect of a 2CV.
Can you imagine?
You could have one car and just have it drive. I mean, you can't affect the ride and handling much, but you could be like, I want to know what it's like to drive a V8 muscle car. All right, we'll make it top out at 5,500 revs and be all grunty, and it will make loud spitty noises. Well, now I fancy a high revving F1 engine. What
you're talking about is essentially an amalgamation of the car and the computer game. In a way.
Yeah, I think that's the way it will go.
Yeah.
Personally speaking, my own personal preference would be I wouldn't want to imitate a petrol engine because...
Let it be something else, not trying to be something...
You don't need to imitate something you've already got.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, people say to me, I don't know much about racing sims, but I like computer games and racing sims and cars and that. People are like, why would you do that? You could just go and do that in real life. It's like, no, I can't just go and drive around the Nürburgring in real life. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
If there was a game where I would have to drive around some really pothole-ridden, bumpy roads full of idiots who can't drive and traffic, I wouldn't do that on a game, no.
I would just like to point out as well, for the sake of clarity, that the Ioniq 5N isn't just about its engine noise. It's actually a fairly serious bit of kit. There's quite a lot of structural changes.
Have you been paid to do this?
No, I'm doing my journalist thing. I'm explaining to the readers,
do you know what
listeners.
So the Hyundai thing that I told you about earlier, which I don't know what it's called.
The bare bones cage. I can't remember what it's called.
No, I don't know what it's called.
Yeah.
But,
it's basically an Ioniq 5N with...
It's the mechanics of one in a
skeleton shell.
Right? And they're like, we've stripped it back. They haven't even put a body on it. Right? We've stripped it back to show what can be done, and it's got loads of little trick bits, and it's got like a hydro handbrake, so it's got a handbrake that doesn't lock.
Yep.
But you just pull it and it locks the back wheels, but it doesn't latch, and locks the back wheels, and it's actually just like reversing the current on the motor. Yeah, drift stick sort of thing. Right? And they've stripped it back, bare bones, all about the driving. Do you know how much it weighs?
Go on.
1,880 kilos.
It's all battery.
And I'm just like, no, that's insane. I've got a Citroen C6, which weighs less.
Yep.
Right,
and that's why
I didn't pick that because that's the heaviest car I've got.
And yet, you know, that 5N is a stupidly heavy car. You're not wrong. There's no getting around that. They're quite big.
The styling's quite good, but if you see them on paper, or you know, in print or something, and you think, oh, that looks like a nice sort of well-styled hatchback.
It's the proportions.
And then you see it in the flesh, and you think
huge,
it's massive.
But for all that, they do drive brilliantly, and they are just immense fun. Partly because
have you driven an Alpine A110?
Yes.
Is it more fun than an A110?
Yeah, no,
really?
It's not more fun than an A110.
Oh, right,
sorry, I thought you were saying is the A110 more fun? Yes, the A110 is more fun because it's lighter, because it is just the principles of physics that it is more fun. Having said that, what the Ioniq 5N can do with its weight is astonishing, and it is kind of that's almost the ultimate expression of being able to set the car up and turn it into what you want it to be, because there are 11 different ways of splitting the torque from front to rear in the four-wheel drive system.
Who needs that?
Well, you might not, but who needs adjustable suspension? You know, who needs any of that? Who needs coilovers that you can turn up and turn down? You know, we don't really need them. Yeah, so why are you putting them? Why would you put them on a road car? Well, no, you wouldn't, but some people would. You wouldn't, but some people would, is my point. And that's the point of the Ioniq 5N, is that, you know, if you drive it and you go, well, it feels a bit neutral, I want it a bit more rear biased, you can do
the only
that.
thing I could say, in fairness, is that it's easier to do that kind of thing on an electric car, because you can just adjust what the motors are doing.
Yeah.
And it's all software.
Yeah.
It's not like you're putting extra hardware in there.
And
because if you put extra hardware in there, it would make it heavier.
And it goes back to what
how heavy is it?
It goes back to what you were saying just now about, you know, seeing an electric car as basically a blank canvas that you can turn into whatever you want to be. And in that way, I guess that's what the Ioniq 5N is in a way. It is that blank canvas that you can set it up to be whatever you want it to be. And actually, there is an appeal in that. It won't appeal to everyone, I know, and I'm probably making the case of something I don't entirely believe myself, because if I were to go and drive the Ioniq 5N and then come back to, I don't know, a Chimera in the garage, I would probably sit there and jump in the Chimera and go, this is much better.
Well, the difference is that the Ioniq, they should call it the Ironic 5 because it's so heavy.
Yeah.
And it sounds like a petrol and it's not. Yeah. But is that ironic, or is that Alanis Morissette ironic?
I don't know. That's a difficult question, because that song, I don't know whether it's supposed to be ironic, that it's not about irony. Anyway, carry on. Have you thought of that? There you go. I've just blown your mind.
Oh,
yeah.
Do you think that's what she's done?
Maybe.
Do you think she's gone, right, all these idiots out there who think they're clever are going to go, the only ironic thing about that song is it's not actually ironic.
That's the irony.
But it could be that's what she intended.
Yeah. That's what I've always wondered. I think, that's what I think a lot of people have wondered, is that if that's the idea behind it. There you go.
The way I owe Alanis Morissette many years of apologies.
And I think that's a good time to really think about ending the podcast. On that note.
I'm going to have to go and live with, I'm going to go and do some thinking. We haven't really talked about old cars enough for people. We'll do that on the next one. Yeah, there's loads of time. You're going to come back next week, aren't you? Aren't you? Next week.
Are we doing this weekly?
Next season.
Next year, probably.
Next year.
Probably next year.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for joining us. And we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.
I just waved. I didn't say bye.
You're going to say bye now?
I've just said it.
Oh. Bye.